Rev up your engines!
It may sound good for Dodge, but it might just be that everybody's getting bad. For the first time ever, in 2019, the Dodge Ram pickups outsold the Chevy Silverado line of pickups. If you've listened to me, I'll tell you, not a fan of Ram pickups. Well, I'm not a fan of the Silverados either, and I think that's more a sign of the general decline of both GM and Dodge. Now, the Ram itself, now it's its own brand, Ram, it's a lot of BS that got thrown out there. They're pushing it. People often fall for advertising. V6 engines that they're putting in those Ram pickups, look at it. Electrical problems, suspension system problems, their history of problems. A lot of people don't really do that much research when they buy something. Yeah, the V8 engine, a Hemi V8 engine is a decent engine. I'm not going to argue that. The GM V8 engines, they're not that bad either. It's the rest of the vehicles that are problematic. So this is kind of like a race to the bottom, and now GM went a little further down to the bottom than Ram did. Now, I realize, of course, this is second best. Ford pickups, the F-150s, outsell them all. So it's not like Dodge won anything. It's just that they're now ahead of GM products that have notoriously been sliding for quite some time. So anybody that thinks this is a really good thing, it's more or less just one's getting crappy slower than the other one is. Here you go. You want to know more about the Mustang Mach-E, that electric SUV that Ford's making? Well, there's some actual news about the reality of it. It's going to come out sometime later in 2020, and it's going to have a range of up to 300 miles on a charge. And it's going to come with a Ford Pass charging network that Ford was bragging about that has more than 12,000 stations where you get your car charged up. They claim you'll be able to go from a 10% to an 80% charge in just 38 minutes. So you can get an 80% of that range in just 38 minutes. So that's not too bad. And a 47-mile charge up would take only 10 minutes. So if you're in a hurry and you have less than 47 miles to go, you can plug it in for 10 minutes. But granted, you got to have one of these stations that has this big charger. That's a 150 kilowatt charger. That's a pretty big charger. And they say that's going to go 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 4 seconds, which isn't close to the big Tesla, but it's still pretty fast. It's going to have a 2-motor electric setup with 459 horsepower, and that particular model is going to be rear-wheel drive only. And it's also going to have a fake grumbling noise come through the speakers. So it sounds like it's making some noise, because by law, they're making it that electric cars have to make some kind of noise so people can hear them coming so they don't sneak up. You are able to turn it off inside, though, so you don't have to hear it inside the car if you don't want to. It'll also support phone as a key technology, so you can use your phone to start and run the vehicle. You don't have to carry any kind of key. Your phone will work. You better have good encryption on it, though, in case somebody takes your phone. I can't wait to come out. I want to get them to send me to try it out just so I can see. I'm curious, like everybody else. I'm too cheap to actually buy one, of course, but I'll try one out and see what it's like. Jetta Nightcon says, Scotty, I was at the deal the other day looking by a Toyota Camry LE 2020. And they were asking if I wanted to purchase undercoating for the car. I thought they'd be undercoated, but they don't come that way. Do they need undercoating? No, they really don't. Toyota was one of the first companies to really set up a good system for anti-corrosion when they build the vehicles in the first place. When they have the frame and stuff put together, they pull it into this tank. The body is all one electricity, like negative. I forget if it's negative or positive. And then the paint that it's drunked into, the tank, is the opposite. If the body's negative, the paint's positive. All that paint that has special zinc additives to it, not only on the outside of the frame, but there's holes in the frame and stuff, air holes, to let paint go in and out. It electrically is connected on the inside. So you really don't need to put undercoating on these things anymore. They're built correctly in the first place. So you're wasting your money. I'll give you an example. My mother still lives in Buffalo. 16-year-old Toyota Corolla, and that thing has no rust on it. She never does anything, and it lives outside in the driveway in the snow and the ice, and it doesn't have any rust on it at all. So, no, don't waste your money paying them extra to put rust proofing on. They're just trying to rip you off. G424 says, what do you think of a 2015 Subaru Crosstrek? My neighbor has one, about 120,000 miles, and he's very happy with it. I am not a fan of Subaru because over the years, those boxer engines blow head gaskets. The automatic transmissions are horrendous, and they break down over time. But I, too, have had customers that have bought them and were relatively happy with them. But They were special customers. They were people that took very good care of their vehicles, like Europeans that move to the United States. They tend to value their money more, and they don't want to waste it on a car they don't take care of, so they take really good care of it, and they don't drive them like maniacs. And a lot of them bought one with a standard transmission. If you really baby a vehicle, and you want a Subaru, they live up north where it snows, and they're all-wheel drive, except for the racing one, so they are good in the snow, and you really take care of your vehicles, you might be happy with a Subaru. But on the other hand, you could get an all-wheel drive RAV4 that would probably last 3-4 times as long. It's your choice. Just realize that if you're a hard driver, don't even think about buying a Subaru. Nashman says, Scotty, I've been thinking about swapping my 1996 Ford Ranger 4-liter with the automatic transmission for the 5-speed standard transmission. Please, listen to me. Don't even start that conversion. That is one hellacious job. I've had customers over the years attempt to pull out an automatic transmission and replace it with a standard. You got to put so much crap in. You got to change the mounts for the transmission. You got to put in a clutch pedal. You got to make holes for the shifter. You got to change the drive shaft. I mean, it is an absolute insane job. Now, I mean, if you're the type of guy that wants to prove he can do anything, and that's a toy, and you're going to do it on the weekends over the course of many months or years, go right ahead. But if this is something that you're driving every day, don't even think about doing that, because it's insanity. And if you're going to pay a professional mechanic like me to do it, you better have an awful lot of money, because anybody who's good at it, they're going to charge a small fortune, because it's such a pain in the rear end to do. You're better, that's a 96, you're better selling the thing and buying one that already has a standard transmission and fixing that up, really. Spencer 1124 says, Scotty, there's a 1999 F-150 5.4 automatic with 220,000 miles on it for $1,000. It doesn't have any heat. You're obviously talking about buying the thing, because you said you see it's there. It's only $1,000. Realize, you're not going to be getting much for $1,000 in terms of a pickup truck of these days. It can be a very complex thing on any modern car. All the heat on those things, even back in 1999, is run by computer systems. The heating and air conditioning system, the control unit, sends data to a computer. It sends electricity to little servo motors that open actuator doors to let the hot air go and blow in your face, and then to close it so you don't get hot air in the summer. There are a zillion things that can make no heat come out of a vehicle. And if those things, let's say you got to change the heater core and the actuators inside, it can cost you over $1,000 tearing that dash apart doing it. Let's say the vehicle runs okay. You can easily put another heater in the vehicle. Cut the 2 heater hoses under the firewall and run new hoses through it and buy an auxiliary heater that's a hot water heater and stick it in there. It's not that complex to do that. Now, it's not going to go through all the different vents and stuff, but you can get plenty of heat that way, and those systems don't cost more than a couple $100 to buy. They have a little box, a little fan and everything, and you can mount it wherever you want to blow hot air around. That's what I tell people to do if they have to have heat. Now, here in Houston, nobody really cares. It's hardly ever that cold. I'm wearing a t-shirt today, and it's January. It doesn't get that cold here, so people really don't care. They'll just disconnect the heater and live without heater if they have something like that that doesn't work at all. Sigma Nail says, I heard you say many times never to buy a vehicle with a salvage or rebuild title, but what about a motorcycle? You got a very good point there, because motorcycles are different than cars. Sort of what you see is what you get. You can't hide much on a motorcycle. There's an engine and 2 wheels and a chain. It's pretty simple stuff, right? And I do have to say, aside from the last motorcycle I bought, a Triumph, every motorcycle that I ever bought was in a giant wreck and was totaled. And back in the day, motorcycles didn't cost that much to begin with anyway. And when they get in a wreck, they total them real fast. And I'm a mechanic, so I didn't have any qualms about buying one. Some guys are superstitious and say, oh, look, somebody was injured or killed on a motorcycle. Well, you know, that was their problem, not mine. I just see it as a machine. And they obviously didn't know how to ride the machine correctly, and something went wrong with them. I'm not saying that the machine itself had a problem. As long as you can road test the thing, hey, why not? Because I've done that. If it goes down the road straight and it sounds good. Motorcycles aren't like cars. Since they're just engines and wheels and a chain, there's not that much to them. There's not that much that you have to check on them. And if they get in a wreck and they're flying through the air, a lot of times they just bounce around, and the people, you know, you get mangled up. You're flesh and blood. They're just steel. and rubber. They can bounce all over the place. Now, you want to make sure that the frame isn't bent or broken, because then it'll ride weird, it'll fall apart. You'd want a good motorcycle mechanic to check it out before you bought it, because you'd want them to see if the frame had been damaged. Because most motorcycles, if the frame's been damaged, unless you have access to the similar your motorcycle, well, it has a good frame and everything else is bad, and you want to swap all that stuff out, it's kind of a hassle. But then again, swapping a frame on a motorcycle is a lot easier than swapping a frame on a giant car. So there's really nothing wrong with buying them on motorcycles if you know how to check them out. You can get a great deal like I did. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.